The Electoral Commission of South Africa has flagged that the Political Party Funding Act needs more power to enable the Commission to follow up on parties that do not disclose donations. The Act came into effect just before the local government elections, stipulating political parties should disclose sums of donations exceeding 100,000 rand. Now, while the Act is a win for transparency, it is still going to rely on political parties to act in good faith. Now, the EIC says the Act in its current form does not enable the Commission to enforce accountability on political parties on failure to disclose the donations they receive. Policy analyst and chairperson of the Election Monitoring Network, Nkosikhulule Nyembezi, joins us now to further this conversation. It's so good to see you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Welcome.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Act in its current form.
Yes, it's a new law in relative terms, and we had expected that it would make an impact in terms of curbing corruption, in terms of facilitating for political parties to make these disclosures. Of course, there are teething problems in the sense that political parties from the onset had said that the Act has elements that are too cumbersome on two spectrums of it. One, on the upper end of the Act in terms of the limit and the ceiling as to how much a private donor can contribute towards a political party. Political parties indicated that donors who have supported them previously are now shy of doing so because they don't want their names to be revealed when political parties make these disclosures. Of course, that is what the Act was intended to do, so that there is no undue influence. Yeah. But on the other spectrum, the bottom spectrum, the Act says that the political parties must declare donations above 100,000, and any donations below that, they must declare that regularly as stipulated by the Act, but any donations below that must be declared in overall in the yearly financial statements. So I think that is now where the bone of contention is, because it looks like political parties have just encouraged the donors to donate sums that are below 100,000 threshold.
And that's where the issue, and I imagine the sticking point, comes in, because the EIC says the way it is currently, unless a disgruntled party member alerts the Commission about a donation made to the party, the EIC does not have the ability to know if the party didn't disclose it. So what mechanisms can be put in place to ensure transparency and truthfulness in disclosing these donations?
Yes, as we try to answer that question, we also need to understand that this Act exists in an ecosystem of financial disclosures and other mechanisms to curb corruption. So what are we saying about declarations of members to the Speaker of Parliament in terms of gifts that they receive? I'm talking about MPs. We don't see much movement there in terms of people making disclosures of gifts that they receive as individuals. Even in cases where they declare, let's just say you submit a completed form that says, during this term, this is what as an MP I have received. We don't see a follow-up to see if any of those disclosures were undue and there's something that needs to be followed up. We don't see any of that. It's just administratively submitted. So that is level one. But level two also has to do with the fact that in terms of this, what this Act seeks to do, whistleblowers in South Africa are not protected. There are no blacklists of companies that are corrupt because they are receiving state tenders. And so there wasn't that much expectations in some quarters that parties are going to declare fully as they are supposed to. But just being pessimistic and say we give political parties the benefit of doubt, one would say at the onset we would have expected a gradual implementation of the Act, where we have political parties educated as to how to be fully compliant. And some of them might be unwillfully have compliant, and as a result of that education, they might eventually come to disclose fully as we want it to be. So I would say the solution lies with education, so that everybody understands the nitty-gritties and comply willfully.
Yeah, I mean, as we keep on emphasizing that this transparency is really left to political parties to act in good faith. Okay, so let's just go back to the drawing board. So what was actually envisaged at the time of drawing this up that would happen if there was a lack of transparency and deceit by political parties in disclosing donations? What were they expected to do?
I think that the bottom line was that voters must judge for themselves. Is Party A disclosing fully? And is the source of income and the donations that they are receiving contribute to an undue influence into the decisions they make once they are elected into legislative bodies? So I think the strength of this act lies in educating the voters so that they can ultimately be able to decide whether there is an undue influence or not. You will remember that it looks like a majority of political parties are united in saying it is difficult to comply with this act. And perhaps we can even commend political parties for voicing out the difficulties and obstacles they are facing. For example, if they say administratively we would need to employ so many people to be able to record each and every donation. So I think it lies with what the good eyes of the public see as acceptable and non-acceptable, because we cannot hope that the courts are going to litigate and offer judgments in order to secure compliance. Compliance should be voluntary and out of the moral duty and the ethical duty of each of the political parties.
So, I mean, if we look at what's been reported so far with the latest quarterly political funding disclosure report, only 4 political parties declared their donations. That's the DA, the ANC, Action SA, and Build One SA. That was it. And none of the other political parties declared any donations, and the total amount by those 4 political parties amounted to 58 million rand. Do you believe that that is the case? I mean, do you believe that those are the only 4 political parties that are getting funding that is over 100,000 rand?
Yes, I do. Because as a researcher, I start on a clean slate because we didn't know much and we still don't know much about the source of funding of political parties in South Africa. So this act is revealing an area that we knew little about. And if we compare political parties with the churches, with other civil society organizations, where do they get the funding? What kind of resource mobilization they embark on in order to do things? You might find that a lot of what political parties use to campaign and sustain their activities is not in a monetary form. So maybe the act doesn't provide for that bartering system. I received so many pumpkins. I received so many cloths and ink so that I can put up the banners, which is non-monetary. But also in the overall scheme of things, South Africa is in an informal economy and informality mode, which suggests that people contribute what they can. If I can paint my spaza shop to have the colors of a political party, that is my contribution, and it might not necessarily be converted accurately into a financial equivalent. If I can use my taxi, remember in KwaZulu-Natal, I have also commented where taxis had put the banners and the election campaign material of political parties to say whether they could be vulnerable to attacks. Those kind of things. If I use my taxi to put up a banner supporting a political party, how do you quantify that and convert it into monetary terms so that you can declare it in terms of this act? So the long and short of it is that there are elements that one could say are not declarable or are not equivalent in terms of strict financial value. But again, I would go back to the thing that says voters must be educated so that they can be able to judge for themselves whether they want to vote back this political party into power because the support they are receiving is due or undue influencing the decision they make in legislative councils.
I mean, let's go back and judge from some of the allegations that came up before Parliament, the Zondo Commission, the Mpati Commission on PIC. The allegations made by somebody like former Chief Executive Dr. Dan Machila. And then he had said he'd been pressured to fund the ANC's birthday celebrations in 2017, as per the request of the organization's then Treasurer General, William Kize, which a story we all know quite well. What is the importance of disclosing donations as well as ensuring that the Act is given powers?
It's just to prevent undue influence of decisions. We know that the state and the political parties, while they say that they provide service delivery, they promise service delivery, they don't do service delivery proper. They contract and tender private individuals, private companies to build houses, to build roads and other public infrastructure, to provide feeding schemes. And so when we do the auditing to see the trail of the money, we then find that the official bodies like the Auditor General, the SCOPA, they do not have authority to look into the books of the private companies that have been offered tenders to do this kind of work. And so to declare the source of funding for the political campaigns is an important thing to understand the source of funding. But here is the question. What do ordinary South Africans say? How much do they care about who funds who? And what voice do they have in terms of how can we change that? Because some of the criticism that comes in is that it is only blue chip individual NGOs that are taking this matter up. And hence, I want to emphasize that public and human rights education to the voters is important. For example, because we are going to the 2024 elections, we could be saying now, voters, go and ask your political parties during election campaigns, where are you getting your money from? Have you declared fully to the EIC? Provide us with the evidence. And on that basis, we will be able to decide whether we vote for you or not. And I think that mechanism can have an impact rather than wanting to go to court or expecting Parliament to amend the Act as things stand now.
So let's look at a current case. And I mean, it's something that came out a while ago, but it seems to have gained prominence over the weekend with, I think it was a report in the Sunday World, and it was all talking about one of Capitec's shareholders, Michel Leroux, having been one of the funders of the DA, even though he said he had done it in his personal capacity, not through Capitec, and it was through one of his other companies. And I think it was, I'm not sure of the exact amount, but I know the limit should be 15 million rand, if that was, if I'm not mistaken, of what you can donate to political parties. But I think this may have been a bit over that. But now there is a whole outcry from a lot of quarters of South Africa saying that they must now leave Capitec, and Capitec must not be their bank of choice because of the fact that he is supporting the DA. This is one of the big problems that is also associated with this particular act, is that the negative repercussions that come out when you do actually disclose. I mean, you've been reading these articles, you've been seeing what's going on. Perhaps give us your views on what's come out of this political story, which, as I say, it's been around, but it seems to have gained prominence now. And social media, this is a massive talking point.
Of course, and that is the starting point. All South Africans who are concerned about eradicating corruption, or those who are concerned about ensuring that the objectives of this act are met, they need to work out a way to destigmatize the funding of political parties. Political parties are important in our democracy. They need to be supported financially and resource-wise throughout the term of office. So we need to destigmatize that. So the more we get voices that point out how beautiful it is to find political parties, and this is the route to take, and it is not shameful, the better. Because now the more we try to shame as if it is something unlawful and unwelcome to fund a political party, the more we are seeking to grow resistance in terms of what we want to achieve as the objective of this act. And so if I were to speak to activists and anybody who's concerned about the matter, I would say let us embark on a campaign, education campaign for the minds of the citizens to say, how do we destigmatize the funding of political parties? Of course, we have seen even examples of funders who say, I will provide to the central fund that is going to distribute the money to all the political parties so that I'm not seen as favoring so-and-so, and those kind of things. So there are channels and avenues that can work to destigmatize, and I think that is what
we need to emphasize in the minds of South Africans. All right. Nkosikhulule, we've got a big thumbs up coming on your page, so I'm going to start wrapping it up, but I want you, if you don't mind, just very quickly to wrap this for me. I mean, this is a new piece of legislation, and a lot can happen in the space. What is the practice in other countries? I mean, for example, the UK, what became the Cash for Honours scandal involving the Labour Party loans came as a result of the loophole because the Act didn't consider loans. What is your view of that, and why were loans considered problematic, and where could that put us? We are different cultures and different ecosystems, and there might be those who want to circumvent what the objectives of this act are. And I think that what we need to do for South Africa, having come a long way to get this act passed, is a system that says that we need to emphasize what is good in terms of the objectives of the act. And I think we will have islands of excellence that can then say this is the best practice. If in one province or in one municipalities, this is how the declarations are made and the people in that territory are happy about it, then we can pick up best examples and then replicate them throughout South Africa. We need to do the trial and error and learn about it. But one other thing is that human rights education and the change in society, it comes gradually. And perhaps this is what we need to do about the level of our expectations, to say we want to see and encourage the gradual compliance with this kind of requirement. All right, let's leave it there. Policy analyst and chairperson of the Election Monitoring Network, Nkosikhulule Nyembezi, talking to us about the EIC flagging that Political Party Funding Act needs more power to enable the Commission to follow up on parties that do not disclose donations. So thanks very much for your time.